A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Frontline. My name is Charles Mwangu Shampagi. Electoral reforms and the debate is almost like beginning. The Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs says that proposals have been tabled to Cabinet, have been presented to Cabinet. They will be coming to Parliament later. Some people are asking, isn't it a little too late? Too little, too late. But what exactly is being proposed? That's what we'll be discussing on The Frontline tonight. And I'll be introducing the panelists that I have this evening, starting with the Honorable Ibrahim Uganda. He represents the people of Kira municipality in the 11th Parliament. He is a member of a new party trying to get registered, PFF, and he is a frontliner. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
I have with me Dr. Maria Kobrunga Matembe. She doesn't need a lot of introduction because she's a senior citizen. Very nice to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
I have from the National Resistance Movement Secretariat, Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, his Director of Communication. Very nice to have you.
Pleasure for me to be here, and good evening, our viewers.
And I have a frontliner, Executive Director at the Uganda Media Center, Ofono Opondo. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to the audience.
Thank you. It'll be interesting, the audience, in joining us to share your views and opinions. And of course, we love the debate that you carry on during and after the show on the various social media platforms. Police officer, traffic police officer Hassan Kigenyi, you said you love the show, you watch the show. I have delivered your message to the Honorable Semujungana and the other frontliners. Thank you for watching the show and for what you do for the country. Let me start with government is talking about presenting proposals for electoral law reform. It's been a demand that's been going on for a long time. We've been asking those questions here and debated on this show for a long time. Let me start with you, Honorable Semujunganda, and ask, with the calendar already out there for the elections of 2026, reforms now at cabinet level, yet to come to Parliament, the process you have to go through as Parliament to pass them, isn't it a little, too late?
So the assumption is that that little is available. When General Tafire was Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, he proposed the names to the President of the Constitutional Review Commission. If I recall, I think he had wanted the Honorable Gallo to head it, either Honorable Gallo or Honorable Ben Watcher. The President received the names. He did not process them. We kept asking, and I think at one time, Mururi Mukasa, the Honorable, was the acting Minister for for Justice. So that matter of the Constitutional Review Commission eventually died. After the 2011 general elections, we moved around the country. I'm not sure the Honorable Miriam Matembe participated in those processes.
Of course, you know, when we came out with that pact,
yes,
compact.
And eventually the compact came to Parliament, was received by late Jacob Olanya, who was the Deputy Speaker. At the time of processing the proposals for administrative and electoral reforms, at that time the Honorable Tashobia, who is now a commissioner in the Electoral Commission, was chairing the Committee on Legal. Government said there was no time to handle them. 2015. They said we can handle them
After the 2016 election.
2016 election. After the 2016 elections, the only proposal that came, the main one, was to remove the term limit. The age limit. And eventually, after that, I think the President himself said there will be a Constitutional Review Commission. He said even him, he had issues he wanted settled. So I've started with that background for the public to appreciate that this is not a new debate. And the Honorable Norbert Mao, his statement is also not a new threat. The debate is not new, and the debate to and the threat to issue the reforms, constitutional, etc., that threat is also not new. I have not seen the content, apart from what I read in the New Vision, that the Honorable Norbert Moore wants term limits to return, that he wants women, especially who are elected on affirmative action, to serve only 2 terms.
That's nonsense.
The other thing I saw in the New Vision was, I think, proportional representation. He and a couple of other issues, and he said he's not sure that they will even go through cabinet. So, but the fact that the Honorable Norbert Moore wants the debate to continue, I want to thank him for that, because this conversation is a conversation that needs to continue. Because at the beginning, we were learning from the past election, and there was a desire to improve the next election. That, I think, eventually was lost. Now we became, all the reforms were reforms, whether legal, administrative, were reforms to help President Museveni continue being the president, from term limits to age limit. And I think after that, he lost the appetite. So when these proposals come, if they ever come, not sure, because in the 10th Parliament, we had a discussion of how the Electoral Commission should be constituted. Should it be appointed by one of the perennial candidates? Should people be publicly interviewed? Eventually, the only reform they brought to Parliament was change of a name.
That's talked about a lot. I don't think it is anywhere in the law that the Electoral Commission's name changed.
It did, by the
They
way.
only
I was on the
added,
committee on
no,
labor. They
one
added
name,
independent.
one word. They
we
put one word.
we can check the writing of that. I don't know, or are you
They
aware
put one word.
if that was actually changed? My information is that it wasn't.
One word.
That wasn't changed. But the broader question to you, Ofono Pondo, is the question of timing. Elections are timetabled.
Yes.
They will happen in 2026. And at least the Electoral Commission has been strict to ensure that the election is held at the time it is supposed to be held. But if you don't have electoral reforms, looking at the timetable now, is there still enough time to pass any meaningful reforms?
Well, where there's a will, there is a way. Isn't that what you people in English language say? Now, it depends on what the people who want to do electoral reforms are referring to. Do they want administrative electoral reforms? If that's the case, that one you can achieve without much consultations. You can ask political parties to write to the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, and they process that through subcommittees of the ministries, call a few people for consultation and take to cabinet. If cabinet agrees with it, it's easy to done. So it's easy to do. But if you want to touch real fundamental issues which may touch the constitution of Uganda, in my view, there's no shortcut but to have a constitutional review commission, which, like Honorable Semuju is saying, there's even a contestation. Who should do it? How should the membership? But going by what the NRM and the President Museveni has been doing, I have no doubt in my mind that he would make even that constitutional commission as broadly representative as possible. Do we have the time and resources? I don't see it. That in this squeezed budget, we can have another money to go around the country, because which region, which district do you go to and not go to, so that you are not accused of unfairness. So for that one, I don't see it. Honorable Mao, from the interview of the New Vision, I have not, when the government presented the list, the legislative agenda, at the beginning of this session of Parliament, I did not see on that list a proposal for a bill for electoral reform or even a constitutional amendment. So my suspicion is Honorable Mao is speaking his mind. Probably I can see him picking elements of what the Democratic Party, since Semogere has been speaking about proportional representation, because I suspect DP is aware it cannot gain a lot of parliamentary seats, so they think that by a number of voters who vote for the presidential candidate or the party, maybe if proportional representation is applied, they can get more seats in parliament and local councils. Two, this is not a new argument. This argument was raised by the DP-leaning delegates in the CA, that let us keep the terms of special representatives, like the women, the workers, youth, and so on and so forth. But I think even if you are to do that, you would need a constitutional amendment. Secondly, you are likely to run into legal troubles because, in my layman's position, that would be discriminatory. Because why do you keep for women and you don't keep for the directly elected members of parliament? Wouldn't that be discriminatory? Because members of parliament should enjoy the same status, in my view, and same protection. So for me, I think that would run into trouble. I don't think where we are, we actually need legal constitutional reforms, in my view. I think we need administrative reforms and just good manners of the players. For example, our laws already criminalize, for example, elements of electoral fraud. Do you need another law for that to say, Semuju, don't raise gangs to beat your rivals? Do you need that? You don't need a law. Do you need a law to say, don't fiddle with the ballot papers and ballot boxes? Do you need that? You don't need. So we just need goodwill from all the players. And I think that one we can achieve it through vigorous civic and voter education. And then planning, advanced planning. For example, what he's talking about, even now, the president has talked about it many times, electronic voters register. I want to pick from my party, the NRM. The last time we tried even having a formal voters register, we abandoned it on the morning of voting because there was a dispute. It was not credible. And we went for whoever says is NRM, come and vote.
You are the government in charge. If you can't have a credible register in the party,
yes,
and you have one for the country.
I am talking about reality. If we have disputes, for example, of people who are in Uganda and they are free to go and register, we even dispute their authenticity on the voters register. How do you then bring in and say, we want to make electoral reform for Ugandans in the diaspora to vote? Do we even know the Ugandans in the diaspora? Do they tell us when they go? Do they inform the system where they have gone? How do you bring in and you say, we want to make a proposal for inmates in prisons to vote? Do we actually have the accurate figures of the inmates?
But what exactly are you saying about government? Because all that is the responsibility of the government in power.
This is what I'm saying. Probably you don't, for now, you don't need legal electoral reforms. What you need is advanced, proactive preparedness, goodwill, and good manners from all the players. And those players include, obviously, the government takes the lead. You need good manners from all the players. And the government is not some abstract thing. The government is you and I, especially the leaders. So, if you are going to have a parliament where where members of parliament are eyeing threats to their constituency, and they go and fiddle with the gerrymandering the constituencies.
Are you being fair to Ugandans when
Yes.
when you rope
Yes.
them in? When you rope them in, by that claim, which is a bit outlandish, that government is you and I. There is a
Yes.
government in charge of this country.
Yes, the government is you
and that government in charge of this country must be held accountable for how it governs.
We hold the government accountable
Yes.
through a number of ways. We can hold the government accountable through our elected representatives. And therefore, we put pressure on the Sembujus who are in parliament to hold the executive to do things right. Secondly, if Honorable Sembujus don't do their work, individual citizens can go to petition court.
The responsibility
Yes.
to introduce electoral reform laws has not only been ordered by the highest court in this country, has not only been debated by civil society, has not only been demanded by political actors in the political opposition, but also actors within the ruling party. Why does government at every turn dilly-dally on the question of introducing
we are
those
not dilly-dallying.
those reforms?
Let me speak for the president. Let me repeat what the president has said publicly. Yes, he has said many times that the legal regime that we have, starting with the Constitution and the laws, have ushered in a framework for free and fair elections to deliver the true aspirations of the voters in the ballot box. And I guess, I have not talked to him directly on this matter, I guess that's why he has not been over-enthusiastic.
He's just been complaining
Yes,
he's just been complaining.
That rigging by NUP, which is referring to. Listen, that rigging the president is referring to by NUP, he's referring to, does not require legal. It does not require a new law. It requires administrative and requires vigilance. That's all it requires.
When NUP complains that they were rigged out of an election they believe they won,
Yes.
FDC has complained of the same on the previous elections. The NRM, through its chairman and presidential and now president, Yoweri Museveni, complains. He's written about vote rigging. The other day he complained about 1 million votes, which he believes NUP rigged.
From where the government led by the president stands, the rigging takes place not because there's absence of the law or lacuna in the law. It is because of administrative mischief and lack of vigilance on the part of the various players, including the NRM.
Charles, what the submission by former opponent tells you, it points to a breakdown of government. When this government wanted some reforms and put in place a commission, their own internal commission of Chionga, almost every government agency did some research and made some contribution. The movement secretariat. Today, the Honorable Mao says, I have a paper, I am taking it to cabinet. The director says they are not even necessary. He hasn't even seen the document.
Well,
I don't know which government he speaks for, that a minister has a document and for you, not seen, you don't even know what he's proposing.
I don't speak for the thoughts of a minister that has not come out from cabinet. And I'm saying, you want me to lie that I am privy to Honorable Mao's thoughts, to his document? I am saying I have not. If he pushes it to cabinet, cabinet has a position and it is published, I will speak for it.
Honorable
But before
Dombo,
that, I'm sorry, Honorable Semuju, you can see the government is disorganized, but the government that I know works through a mechanism in this particular case, cabinet. Once we have a cabinet position, then I can speak for it.
Emmanuel Dombo, let me come to you. You sit at the secretariat of the party in power. First is, do you see a need as a political party for these electoral law reforms? Number two is, do you think, from where you sit, there is adequate time to introduce any reforms and actually implement them to function for the 2026 elections?
Thank you very much, Charles. When you read and follow what has been happening in the country, you discover that there have been court decisions that have been made requiring and giving directives that some constitutional reforms be made in regard to the elections. During the consultative process of political parties, when I was still in Parliament, there was an agreement on the basics that could be introduced in Parliament for reforming. But apart from the electoral reforms, there may also be other areas of constitutional reform that may not necessarily be talking about elections that may be necessary. And the president has come up to concur with the population. Because when the president addressed the population during the memorial lecture for General Nyakairima, he concurred that there were some areas of abuse whose modification cannot be made unless the law is reformed. So, to me, I think this is something very positive. And if I was in Parliament, I would, as members of Parliament, would progressively push to ask the the Minister for Constitutional Affairs, to come and tell us whether this can be attained, and also to require the Speaker of Parliament to discuss the business, because the business in the House is determined by the Business Committee. So, whoever wanted to talk about the constitutional reforms and the electoral reforms, there is concurrence of the mind by the president, because NRM was cheated. And he sees that this is a problem that happened because of the gaps that exist within the technology and the processes of administering elections. And he clearly said that we need to do, that is his proposition. Let us introduce technology, and where technology fails, let us suspend elections. Currently, the law doesn't say so. That is his wish. And he expressed it when he addressed. But in order, even if you wanted to implement the desires of the president, it would require amending the law. So to those who are in Parliament, whose duty it is to discuss and amend the Constitution, they could either pick it up if somebody has delayed as private members' bill, if they can secure support from government, but by way of certificate of financial implications. If not, they can caucus through the various political parties, and they bring it as proposals from political parties. If the Minister for Constitutional Affairs is not up to the game to bring it quickly. But now, there are two things. Ordinarily, according to the normal working of government, we should have expected that before Honorable Robert Mao came up to make a proposition or a public declaration about what he's thinking about, there should have been a concurrence in cabinet or with the appointing authority. That one I don't know. If Honorable Robert Mao was here, he would have been the best person to tell us whether the ideas that were published in the New Vision were his desires, whether it was part of the discussion when he was coming into government, or, like Ofono Opondo says, it is part of the general feeling from the Democratic Party, given the historical perspective that my brother Ofonopono has given. In order to get into credible elections and the propositions the president made, I don't think it would require consulting the whole country in order to introduce technology.
I put a question to you specific. You as a party, as a leader in the ruling party, have you had a discussion? Do you think there is adequate time to introduce any reforms? Will they be meaningful?
I think by the time the president said he feels there is adequate time and these laws could be made. But once the propositions have made into the House, there are amendments that you cannot make unless you have done wide consultation of the various players or the various stakeholders in the Constitution. For instance, are you going to just wake up and say there is a term limit for women members of parliament without consulting? You may require to consult district councils, you may require to consult the civil society, you may require to consult widely, and there may be legal issues also of discrimination like somebody has already mentioned. So the time is there to introduce some reforms, but the major reforms that will require wider consultation may...
So as a party, you're satisfied with the status quo, are you?
Right now, the party has not had any internal discussions about proposed constitutional reforms.
Dr. Matembe,
because if this was to happen, the Central Executive Committee is the central organ through which these issues would have been processed. Or the Secretariat, through the Secretary General, he hasn't received any such propositions. And for us as a party, we are prepared to talk about the roadmap for the internal processes of NRM, but that one, the reforms, have not yet been a subject for consideration.
Dr. Matembe, let me come to you. What does it mean for the country? You were involved in the Citizens Compact heading into the 2016 elections. That was after the 2011 elections. Most of the proposals made haven't seen light of day. Now you're going into another election. So 3 elections since the Citizens Compact, and no comprehensive electoral law reform process has taken place. What does that mean for democracy for this country?
For me, I have to come here and talk on behalf of the people. Like these people have positions, they speak for positions. Me, I am here to speak for Ugandans all over there. Ugandans, whether they are electoral reforms or not, elections in Uganda are meaningless to Ugandans. Elections in Uganda are meaningless to Ugandans, waste of money, torturing of people, beating and killing people during elections for posing. So elections are meaningless to Ugandans. And that is how I begin. Now, for electoral reforms, it is not only the compact. You remember 2011, when we went around the country, we were beaten, stripped naked citizens, and the product of our moving around was the organization called Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, CEDU.
That was in 2009.
Yes. And this CEDU came, as the title goes, Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy. Our role was to work and ensure that there is free and fair and integrity in electoral processes and that kind of thing. And of course, we worked, and if you don't know, you may have known. Come 2021, the last elections, when all civil society organizations were shut down, we were refused to observe elections. And because Citizens Coalition in Uganda, they are all over the place, they are part of the electorate, they were there not official observing, but they saw all these wrong things that were happening in elections. And when they sent us information and we made a report to Electro, which we published, we were dissolved, we were banned SEDU was banned and it is no longer in existence because it saw all those wrong things. Now, it is not the compact only. In fact, even the last, this last petition did not come out. But even with the petition of Mbabazi, with the petition with the messages, with all those, the court, the Supreme Court, was always telling the government to make those reforms. But those reforms have not taken place because the government is not interested in them. Now, as for Mao coming with the reforms, two things. Mao entered into an agreement which we don't know with President Museveni because each of them says their own. He said when he entered, he was supposed to make laws that will bring peaceful transition and, of course, electoral democracy into this country. And after that, when he started talking about actually those beginning to work like that, the president went there on the TV and said, who? Me, agreeing with Mao. I just took him, convinced him like I've been doing with other opposition so that we can work. I mean, how can I agree with Mao? But because Mao, like, is it Dombo who says it, or he has it in his mind that he has got to please Ugandans and show them that he's sticking to his role, which he said he was doing. Now he's coming with it. But in it, for me, what I see in that, the only thing I see there in that reform, and when I see Dombo here saying the president is now agreeable, he has seen reading. Choka, this president, at times I want to say nonsense, then they say I'm bad. But there are certain things which really angers too much. Because the president overthinks Ugandans are fools. He thinks they don't understand. What about those judgments when they come out at Supreme Court saying irregular and rigging and all that kind of thing? You remember also the elections where, was it by elections, where he also said, yes, there was rigging here. He has already said there is rigging. But me, if he thinks that we can believe that the whole government, which we saw, beating all these new people, arresting them, doing all the evil that they did, and some of the children have never been seen, and he's coming out now telling Ugandans, yes, I have evidence, 1 million votes. How many votes has he been rigging? Even with messages, elections used to read, even to buy them, and all these kind of things. So now, for me, what I want to tell Mao, yes, he wants to please Ugandans, that he has come with what he promised he would do. But secondly, let me tell you, the major reform which is coming out of this reform, and I'm here to prophesy, and the president is now with it, is this thing of, help me, is it parliamentary elections of the president to change the system of presidential elections? At the helmet of this reform which Mao is talking about will come the way the president is going to be elected. They want to do away with the public elections of one man for president and bring the parliamentary, is it called? Parliamentary system of presidential elections. That one, I tell you, that one is to come. And when you say, yes, they rigid, let's do this, that will come. Now, the other one of the machine, really, that's why I say I get so tired with the president who lies people. Is there telling you them lies, and he thinks people don't know that he's lying them. Since I left even politics, by that time actually I left, when I was still a minister for ethics and integrity, this technological, the machines like the ones in Kenya, which, what are you calling them?
The
electronic voting. I'm 19 years out of this government, 21 actually, 21 out of government and 19 out of parliament. By the time I left, that was the rule that we are going to establish that
biometrics and...
Didn't they, by the way, try the machine? I can't remember. Was it not tried here in this country? Yes, it
and
was.
Electronic voting is a new proposal.
It came up, it was, somehow down the road. I don't know what happened. But now he's there telling us, then if it doesn't come, then no elections. What did the president tell us? He told us, if COVID has not gone, that was in 2021 elections, he stood up and said, if there is COVID is still here, no, there will be no elections. And he shouted it like that. And me, I said, wait, we shall see. And down the road, what happens? The COVID was there, elections
the Electoral
were
Commission
there.
said it could actually go ahead and organize the election.
But what are you telling me? The president is supreme. They are saying his wish. Is there any wish of the president which doesn't pass through that parliament? When it is a transactional parliament, he can get anything he wants. Now, if he say wish, but let the parliament, what are you talking about? Which parliament can decide anything which President Museveni doesn't want?
Let me take a message.
We are tired of being deceived.
Let me take a message from Ambrose Ochan, who has tweeted on X and says, allow me appreciate my role model, Mr. Fono Pondo, for always being genuine and authentic with his explanation. Nicholas Sengova is watching us and says, let me take a message. Yes, Nicholas says, OO contradicts himself when he says that you are discriminating if you cap the terms for woman representatives are not for all other MPs. The women's seat is ring-fenced for only women, and by this argument, by OO's argument, that discriminates against men who are not allowed to contest. Yet women can also contest with men on the direct elected seats. That's a message from Nicholas Sengova.
By the way, would you allow me to say something on this thing?
Can I allow you to say that after a very short commercial break? We'll pick it up. I'll start with you.
The other one? Okay.
Yes.